At the World Defense Show 2026 in Saudi Arabia, something rare happened in plain sight, a like-for-like comparison where marketing had fewer places to hide. Russia brought its latest MANPADS, the 9K 333 Verba. Poland brought Piorun, China brought QW12. Three systems meant to do the same job: deny low-altitude airspace to helicopters, drones, cruise missiles, and attack aircraft, standing a few meters apart under the same lights, judged not by slogans, but by the quiet details that tell you what's inside a weapon and what a defense industry can actually build. And the uncomfortable takeaway from Moscow is simple: Piorun already looks better than Verba, and the gap is set to widen with Piorun 2. That is not a statement about patriotism or PR. It's what happens when you compare ranges, ceilings, sense of philosophy, electronics integration, and most revealing, manufacturing quality in 2026, after years of sanctions and technology isolation have started to show up not as headlines but as rough edges on metal and compromises in design. Start with the numbers Russia can't easily adjust. Export brochures force a degree of honesty because foreign buyers can test what they're promised and because range and altitude are the first things any customer asks. Official figures put Piorun at over 6.4 kilometers of range versus roughly 5 kilometers for Verba, and a maximum engagement altitude above 4,000 meters versus about 3,500 meters. In MANPADS terms, that difference is not cosmetic. A kilometer and change in range is extra reaction time, extra geometry, and extra ways to punish aircraft that think they're safe by staying just outside the envelope. More altitude matters the same way. It expands the no-go bubble for helicopters popping up over terrain and for drones trying to loiter where ground fire can't reach. But raw kinematics are only half the story, because the most decisive question for shoulder-fired air defense is not how far can it fly, it's what can it see and what can it ignore. In modern battlefields, the target is often smaller, colder, or deliberately deceptive. Drones can be tiny, cruise missiles can run low with limited heat signatures, aircraft throw flares and use tactics designed to confuse infrared seekers, so the seeker head and the signal processing behind it becomes the real contest. Here, Piorun's advantage is less about a single magic component and more about an architectural choice: digital signal processing pushed forward in the chain. In the Piorun, the signal from the photodiode in the seeker is converted into digital form immediately, which opens the door to filtering, classification, and multi-criteria discrimination. That means the missile isn't just seeing heat. It can analyze heat sources and compare them across several dimensions: spectral characteristics, position, timing, and relative motion. In plain language, it has more ways to decide whether the glowing point in front of it is an aircraft or a flare that suddenly appeared and is behaving like a flare. That matters because countermeasures are not theoretical. If you can't separate the target from the decoy reliably, then range and altitude are meaningless on paper. The missile will fly beautifully into the wrong thing. Russia, of course, claims Verba has high sensitivity and good resistance to electronic countermeasures. But notice the pattern: broad adjectives, no operationally useful metrics. Poland, in contrast, has been willing to talk about detection capability. Piorun can detect aerial objects at around 8 kilometers, meaning you can engage a target when it's still roughly 7 to 8 kilometers out. That doesn't mean it always scores a hit at 8 kilometers. Engagement envelopes depend on target aspect, speed, altitude, and conditions. But it does imply a stronger acquisition and pre-launch track, which is exactly what you want when seconds decide whether the aircraft releases its weapons and escapes. And then we get to the part defense shows inadvertently reveal: build quality. It's easy to hide electronics inside a sealed seeker. It's harder to hide sloppy machining, crude fastening, or heavyweight good enough solutions that hint at deeper industrial constraints. Observers at WDS 2026 noted that Piorun looked more technologically mature than both Verba and QW12 in several visible areas: the trigger mechanism, the missile design including the proximity fuse, the overall manufacturing finish, and the included thermal sight. Those are not superficial nice-to-haves. A better trigger mechanism improves ergonomics and engagement speed under stress. A proximity fuse increases lethality against small targets and near misses. A high-quality thermal sight expands night capability and makes the operator's job more forgiving, especially against drones that are hard to spot visually. So why does Verba look rougher? Because in 2026, Russian defense manufacturing is increasingly a story of engineering under constraint. sanctions imposed after Russia's invasion of Ukraine didn't just block luxury goods, they restricted access to high-end electronics manufacturing tools and components that are difficult to substitute quickly. And in missile systems, the pain shows up fast. When you lose access to modern electronic supply chains, you can still design something impressive on a whiteboard, but you struggle to produce it with consistency, miniaturization, and reliability. The result is often a system that works in principle but feels heavier, cruder, and less refined than competitors who can iterate with better components and better production methods. The Piorun's launch mechanism is a small window into that difference. It reportedly includes a programmable keypad, a recorder that can reproduce the firing sequence, and an authorization system to prevent unauthorized use. Those aren't gimmicks. A programmable interface suggests the system can adjust firing logic and optimize settings. The recorder supports training, diagnostics, and accountability, key for professional forces and export customers. The authorization system is a security feature that matters when you're selling portable missiles that could be stolen. Crucially, such integration also hints at a digital backbone. You don't build that ecosystem around a purely analog seeker chain. Verba and QW12, by comparison, were noted as lacking that kind of programmable keypad, which raises an obvious question. If you can't easily configure modes, how flexible is your missile logic against different target types? And Piorun's approach goes one step further. The operator selects a mode, think pursuit, head-on, or stationary target profiles, and the system automatically adjusts internal parameters, including the settings for 3 fuses, as well as speed and flight dynamics based on the chosen attack method and target type. That is what modern weapons do when they're designed not just to fire, but to adapt. If your system always behaves the same way regardless of target geometry, then your opponent only needs to learn one set of counters. If your system can vary behavior intelligently, you force the target to respect uncertainty. Even the dumb parts tell a story. The missile is in a disposable launch tube, so the tube should be strong, simple, light, and cheap. Yet Verba's container reportedly used a heavy metal clamp, multiple knobs attached with a thick resin layer, and overall workmanship that looked careless. On a show model, which should be the best finished example, if the display piece looks like that, what does the fielded baseline look like after mass production pressures and wartime logistics? It's a brutal question, but it's exactly the kind of question defense shows make unavoidable. Finally, there's the ecosystem: identification, friend or foe, and night optics. Both Piorun and Verba can integrate with a portable friend or foe interrogator, but Piorun's NATO standard environment is widely viewed as more modern and more reliable than Russian alternatives. On night capability, Verba is shown with the 1PN97 Mowgli 2 night device, described as effectively stalled in development due to limited access to appropriate technologies. Piorun, on the other hand, is adapted for the continually modernized CTP-1 thermal sight from Poland's PCO, smaller, lighter, and ergonomically friendlier, with the Russian device weighing around 1.5 kilograms. In MANPADS use, weight is not comfort, it's endurance, readiness, and how long a unit can stay lethal on the move. So what does this Piorun versus Verba moment really mean? It's not just a win in a showroom, it's a snapshot of 2 trajectories. Poland is iterating upward, better processing, better integration, better sights, and a clear path to Piorun 2. Russia is trying to sell modernity while wrestling with industrial bottlenecks that make modernity harder to manufacture at scale. And in air defense, where the margin between a miss and a kill is often a split-second decision inside a seeker head, the side with better electronics, better manufacturing discipline, and better iteration cycles tends to pull away. The real question then isn't whether Piorun is better than Verba on paper. The question is, in a world where drones proliferate, low-altitude threats multiply, and sanctions reshape supply chains, which countries can still build small missiles with big brains and keep improving them year after year? Because that's what decides who controls the lowest layer of the sky.